Recording. Is Misha Gar Indian, Miholo Maloin, Una Saran Dumsa. I'm the granddaughter of Michael Mallon. My name is Una, called after his wife Agnes. I'm not going to give you a history of Michael Mallon's life, but I'm going to tell you what brought him here to Emmet Hall. As Michael said, this hall was bought by James Larkin in 1912. He had set up he wanted to have a branch, an Inchicore branch of the ITTGWU, which he had formed in 1908. So he appointed William Partridge as manager. Now, William Partridge was a councillor, and he was also very much involved during the lockout. He was also instrumental in the cultural events of setting up cultural events here in Emmet Hall. And you can see from the picture over there, they were in the form of ceilidhs and songs and dancing. And they were held, there's a big back garden out here, and they had a platform, and all these events were held out there. Now, in 1915, I think it was in 1915, William Partridge had to go around the country to the other branches of the ITTWU, but he needed somebody in his place. So Michael Mallon was appointed as manager of Emmet Hall. And I think that it was William Partridge who suggested that Michael Mallon might be here, because he thought him, and I quote here, as being one of the finest, kindly-hearted and clear-minded men it has ever been my good fortune to meet. And he also used those words when he was asked to be godfather to Michael Mallon's daughter, who was born in the August after her father was executed. Now, Michael Mallon was a silk weaver by trade, but he was also, and he had been in the British Army for 12 years. He was a proficient musician and played several instruments, especially the flute. But he was also well known for conducting bands, particularly fife and drum bands. Now, at that time, there was a fife and drum, the Inchicore fife and drum band used to practice here twice a week. And when Michael Mallon was asked to be conductor of that band, he was only delighted, because beside here there is an apartment, and the family was able to move into that apartment in 1915. Now, it was one of the many apartments they lived in. They were a bit like nomads, actually, because they lived all over the place. And everywhere they went, Michael established music, and people came to his house for violin lessons, and that he also had bands around the country. As I said, they moved house very, very often, and that was the reason, because it was very difficult in those days. Rents were difficult. Mind you, things haven't changed much today, but it's still difficult for rents. But anyway, Michael, when he became manager here, he was able to, he continued conducting the fife and drum band here, and he became very well known. He was also highly respected. But at that particular time, he also became interested in the ITTWU and also formed a branch of the ICA. And from then on, unfortunately, music was beginning to be a bit sidelined, much to his regret. Next to his family, as I said before, music was the love of his life. But because of his involvement, and before he came here, actually, I should have mentioned, he was aware of the events that were going on here in the hall, because he used to come over here to conduct the band. So he was aware of what was going on. But he, at that time, then became interested involved in the ICA. And James Connolly knew that he had been in the British Army, and he thought he was the right man for the job. So he got his troops, and he did a tremendous amount of drilling and practice, and a lot of it was in the back garden here, even though he went other places as well. But his troops, they did some target practicing out in the back. Behind here, as Michael said, is Richmond Barracks. And Michael was quite adept at acquiring rifles and ammunition. And I'm sure James Connolly knew this. So Richmond Barrack being behind here, Michael was able to acquire rifles from friendly soldiers in the barracks. And he used to climb the wall and get them. Now, they couldn't stay in the house for very long because the house was raided on several occasions. Now, one particular day, James O'Shea, who was also the ICA, came over to the hall at the request of Michael Mallon and couldn't find him. So his young son, Seamus, said, "Oh, he's out in the back garden." So James was delighted, but when he didn't come back in, he went out to see where he was, and he saw two fellows scarpering over the back wall, and James fell over something. It happened to be Michael Mallon, who had been clobbered on the head and was rendered unconscious. Michael himself wasn't living in this house for very long because in 1916, at the time of the Rising, he was chief of staff and he was commandant over in Stephen's Green. And Partridge and Countess Markovich were with him. And after the Rising, he was arrested. They were all arrested, but he was arrested and brought here to Richmond Barracks. And from there, he was brought to Kilmainham jail. But unfortunately, when he was passing, he had to pass this house on his way to Kilmainham jail, and he stopped, looked up at this house, hoping to see a member of the family, but unfortunately, none of them were there. He didn't, but all he saw was his little dog, Prinny. So he was really sad about that. And then he was brought to Kilmainham jail, and he was court-martialed, of course, in Richmond Barracks, brought to Kilmainham jail, and he was executed on the 8th of May, which would be his anniversary will be next Sunday.
Next Sunday.
Yeah, the 8th of May, 1916. Now, his family continued to live in this house, not until 1929, Michael, actually. No, it was 1924, I think.
24.
It was earlier, yes. And then they went to they moved then to Mount Brown. When my father was the eldest of the family. You can see him here in the picture. This one here is my father. He was only 12 years of age. So, actually, I should have mentioned too that Con Colbert, I think some of his relations are here, he was also involved here as a volunteer, so he used to come over to do some drilling as well. And he too was executed on the same day as Michael Mallon. Yeah, what was interesting then was that this place, after the was around up to 1930, this place then was used as a cultural centre after the Rising. And there were a lot of things going on. And one of the things actually was they showed films here. But what is interesting is that my grandfather, opened a cinema on the corner of Jervis Street and Mary Street. But it was it was a financial disaster, as were all the things that he put his hand to. He lost an awful lot of money on everything he did. And so it was rather ironic that they showed films here.
Like Patrick Pearse, he lost a lot of money.
They showed, and I think it reverted then to being a butcher shop afterwards again, by the name of Mallon, Mallon. I think that's right. Yes, yeah. It wasn't easy for Agnes Mallon either, because the house still continued to be raided even after her husband was executed. And so she had a fairly tough life trying to bring up the children, but did a great job of it. So I think that's about all I have to say about Michael Mallon.